Hey everybody, today I have an amazing video with Lynette Zang. I just got back from her off-the-grid property. This is a long-form, incredible interview covering everything you can imagine from hyperinflation, the reset, how to prepare. We filmed this in 3 cameras. It's the highest quality video I've ever produced. You're really gonna like this one. Just quick shout out to our sponsor in today's episode. That's First Majestic Silver, one of the premier silver stocks in the entire world. That's First Majestic Silver. So thank you for being our sponsor for today's episode. And last but not least, if you haven't yet, right there down below, there's a link. And with Lynette and her team, you can schedule a complimentary gold and silver wealth strategy call to prepare yourself for this hyperinflationary reset scenario. So you'll see that down below. And I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Give me a comment down below and let me know if you'd like to see more with this style of interviews. And I'll see you on the other side. The Great Reset is a new term that we've started to hear more of. But what you don't know is that these global resets, and more specifically, these economic resets, have been going on all throughout human history. And today to discuss this topic, we have my good friend, Lynette Zang. We're here at her beautiful bug out house.
Yep.
And we're very excited about today's topic. So make sure you hit the like button on this video. Give us a comment down below. I want to remind everyone, right there down below, it's pinned to the comments and in the description, is a link to sign up where you can get a complimentary call with Lynette's team to help break down exactly how to put your own game plan together financially for this coming reset. So the question asked is, do you have a plan? And if not, I highly suggest right there down below, you can sign up for your complimentary call with Lynette and her team. Lynette.
I'm so happy that you're here. I mean, this is really not just the topic, so I'm a little off topic for a second, but it's very exciting to have you up here because this is part of what the property is all about. So yeah, I mean, the reset, I've been talking about it since 2009 when then IMF chief Christine Lagarde in a conversation on Bloomberg used the word reset and the need to reset the entire global system about, I don't know, 28 or 29 times. Unfortunately, that video has been taken down. But yeah, I went, okay, this is where we're at. And I knew it from 2008. So we need to be prepared. And you made a really good point, is you've got to have a plan into this so that you can sustain your current standard of living as much as possible and even be in a position to take advantage of this inevitable reset.
And so the link to sign up to your complimentary call is right there down below with the ITM trading team. Now, let's start with, it's nice that we're here talking about the reset in your bug out house because it just fits the overall theme perfectly. But from a macro perspective, so most people had never heard of the term the Great Reset until the World Economic Forum started putting out their little 60-second commercials, and then Klaus Schwab wrote the COVID-19 reset book. But give us an idea, because you're saying this term is something you've been following since 2009. So give us an idea behind this.
Well, I've actually been, I've studied currencies and currency life cycles since 1987. So as you said earlier, I mean, this kind of thing has been going on forever. And when 2008 hit, at that point, I knew, and I've been saying it, you can follow all my work, that the system died and it went on life support. So it wasn't really a big surprise when Christine Lagarde came out and started talking about the reset. So, I've known about it because I've studied it for so long. But then, and I knew the system died in 2008, but she really confirmed it in that interview for me. I mean, it was like every other word out of her mouth.
And why do you feel like she confirmed it? And why is that? So they're saying reset basically is they're saying this isn't working and they're using it as a cover for a new system, or why?
Well, it's not so much that this isn't working, although that's true. It's that the tools that they gave themselves at the beginning of this experiment, which were interest rates that were ratcheted up at 21, the overnight rate that the Fed can control. You know, in the early 80s, they were ratcheted up to 21.5 intraday. So, and interest rates are a key tool for central bankers to control the rate and speed of inflation. I mean, they want inflation, obviously, for a number of different reasons. But when 2008 hit, and on a global basis, you had all of the central banks, pretty much all of them, drop the interest rates to zero. And then in 2009, Switzerland was the first one to go to negative rates, and also the big experiment with quantitative easing, which it isn't that they haven't been pumping money into the system. Again, it goes back to the speed and how they were directing that to make it more obvious that there were winners and losers in this whole system. So she confirmed it for me when she came on, and pretty much every other word out of her mouth was about the need for the reset. And so I knew, especially when any central, and we're going to be testing it again, but when any central bank has attempted to raise rates or even normalize, let's say, reduce their balance sheet, they have been unable to do it, period, end of discussion. And they're not going to be able to do it now either.
So let's go into, for someone that maybe you hear the word, the reset, and maybe you think, first of all, like, is this a conspiracy theory? Or you've just never heard it at all. Let's go first, like, Great Reset 101. What is the Great Reset?
Okay. Well, if you kind of think of it, when you've got your, computer or some kind of electronic equipment that's got a bug in it or is going nutty, and then what do? You have to shut everything down and restart everything again. So if you think about a reset like that, the system that they created, and they being central bankers primarily, and then the governments go along because they don't really understand this anyway. When you lose all of your tools and the system isn't working properly, and I think everybody can look out there to what's been happening and see the insanity that is not below the surface anymore, with all of the markets. Well, they need to reset the system, just like you would reset your computer or something like that. And they have to reset it into a new system because the old system simply does not work anymore. And there is absolutely, I'll tell you, there is absolutely zero question in my mind as to whether or not this is the end of this fiat money experiment and the direction that they're taking us into the next one, which is programmable money. And it's always the progression of more and more and more control.
So what is programmable money, right? Because my next question was, what's on the other side of this new fiat system? So let's paint a picture of what the reset looks like. So first of all, what is programmable money when you say the death of fiat and the birth of programmable money?
Right. Well, first of all, it's still fiat. And fiat, the literal translation is by decree. So the bottom line is this is government money, right? And government controlled money, or centrally controlled money. And in the evolution of money, when you had gold and silver physical as money, then it made it a lot more challenging for governments to tax and spend because you knew about it. And it also made it more challenging for corporations to pay you less because if you were used to a certain wage, you were not willing to accept less. So then they transitioned it into the fiat money that's debt-based. And that started in 1913, but it really went into the highest level as far as handing control of the money, the value of money, over to central banks in 1971, when Nixon, they make it sound so, he closed the gold window. Okay, well, it's a little chilly. Let's close the window, right? But it was so much bigger than that because now the central banks were in full control of inflation. Okay, but so they could control it by policy, but they didn't know whether or not that policy was actually working until about 18 months down the road. Now the next iteration, and cryptocurrencies, that's all programmable money. It's all algorithms, right? So that really is an opening for central banks to take even more control. And right now, where they control inflation by raising or lowering interest rates, and they're not going to be able to raise them this time. I mean, they'll try, but it'll fail. Then still, in programmable money, they can take it as deeply negative, which attacks principal, as they want. Because the big key about inflation is that it attacks your purchasing power, right? So where you could spend $1 in 1913 and get this huge basket enough to feed your family of 4 for a week, right? I mean, can you do that on $1 anymore? Of course not. So officially, there's about 3 cents left in purchasing power on the dollar. In reality, the only reason why it's still viable is because people have confidence in the dollar. So this is definitely a con game, but you can take $1 out of the bank, at least at this point, and protect your principal, right? You're not going to protect the purchasing power because inflation is controlling that. And we all see what's happening with inflation speeding up really, really dramatically these days. And obviously, so programmable money means that for, particularly for central banks, since there's no purchasing power left, they can attack your principal. And if everything that you own is inside of the system, right, as if it's all held in fiat dollars, when they attack that principal value, well, there's really nothing you can do about it other than spending it so that you buy anything that you think will hold its value better than the currency. In this programmable system, you can sit there and watch your principal evaporate, knowing you haven't spent any money, but it's those negative interest rates. And if you're still not spending that money, they just push a button and have those rates go more deeply negative. So they know instantly if their programs are working, and if they're not, then they can instantly change them for everybody all at once in real time and force you to do what they want you to do. That's programmable money. And, aside from the negative rates, if they don't like what you say or what you're doing, if you don't go along with what they want, well, they can push a button and have that money disappear. Or you lose complete access to it. And there's nothing you can do about it.
So for someone let's paint a picture for someone on the significance of negative interest rates as a tool that central banks use as a part of this reset. For someone that is maybe interested in this idea of the reset, right? But they're not some big economic person, so they hear this term negative rates and it just goes. So explain why negative rates are a tool that is used essentially no matter whether you're an economic nerd or you're just a random guy that likes yoga and hiking. Explain the significance of that for your freedom.
Oh, a huge significance. It's not just the negative rates, but if you think about negative rates, and I say attacking your principal, but and I'll go into the freedom in a second. But if you have $1,000 in your bank account and you don't go out and spend it, and negative rates are attached to it, then you open up your bank account and now you have $95 or $950.
Because it is eating.
And then exactly, it's eating your principal. And then all of a sudden you've got $900 etc., right? So rather than sitting there, and this goes to freedom too, because it's freedom of choice, which we're losing a lot of that these days. And it really scares the bejeebies out of me. But if they control the money, they control the population, because we work for money. We use it as a tool of barter. I mean, they've really gotten people into this mindset that the only function of money is barterability. And you can't save it because, number one, it loses purchasing power over time. And in negative rates, it even loses principal value over time, right? So if your wealth is held in the system, they're really controlling you. And that goes to the loss of freedom and the loss of choice.
Right. Totally understand. Now, what are the significance as they move toward, because now we've seen Jerome Powell talk about a digital dollar. I've seen many Canadian government job postings on their central bank digital currency. We've had Business Insider, all these big places that have profiled China's programmable money they set it up and they could get rewarded and punished, and the money would disappear if it wasn't spent in a certain duration. And it was all connected to basically a centralized grid that, as you said, they could pull the levers on, and it's their new tool belts. But explain the significance of negative rates with the reset. So is the point of the negative rates to get people to keep spending so it doesn't lock up? They say so it doesn't lock up the economy, or what is the significance of them doing that?
Well, first of all, we are a consumer-driven economy, and China's been shifting into a consumer-driven economy. And I'd even argue primarily we're in a consumer-driven world. So, and we're in a really interesting place right now with the supply chain, which really we need consumerism, or so they say, to back off, to give them a chance to repair and get caught up on the supply chain on the one hand. But on the other hand, because we're a consumer-driven economy, we need the consumer to consume even more than they have been.
Got it. So it's a tool to make them do it.
Exactly. It really is all about control. And that really is the importance of having physical gold and silver outside of the system, because that they can't control.
Right.
Admittedly, Bank of International Settlements, gold held at home runs no political risk. Those aren't my words. Those are the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central banker's central bank. And it's absolutely true. It is also a known inflation hedge. And it is also a key tool going into any kind of economic crisis. And this is all, it's a fact, and I say it, but when you have the central bank of all central banks saying it, you need to know that it's true. And besides that, and it isn't just that they say it that makes it true. My daddy always said, do what I say and not what I do. Though he's usually referring to driving. But that was so beneficial for me growing up. And of course, we don't realize these things because I listen to what they say, but then I watch what they do. And when their actions are congruent with their words, then I know they're speaking the truth. When they're not congruent, then I know that it's a lie. And we also, so we know that it was actually 2000, the graph is not in front of me, so maybe I'm off a year. But it was in 2006, I believe, when central bankers stopped selling or leasing out their gold and began to accumulate it in earnest. And that was before the 2008 crisis. And if you look at the graph, you can see that the net sales were declining. And then by 2010, they became net buyers. And they've been buying more gold than they ever had historically and holding more gold. So that's true. That's why they're doing it. Now, not every country, you mentioned Canada. Canada sold off all their gold reserves. they are in deep doo-doo because they will not be able to stay in any level of control. That's what the gold does. But on the other side of it, you see China that has been massively accumulating gold. No gold that they produce in China leaves the country, period, end of discussion. So they don't export any gold. And in 2006, they allowed their citizens to start to accumulate and buy gold again. And they made it easy for them to buy it and hold it in the bank. So not really taking physical possession of it, though they could, but they inspired them to hold it in the bank. And recently, even though they don't show this level, but if this is true, they hold something like 22,000 ounces or tons of gold, which blows what the U.S. says that they have way out of the water, which is, 8,200 tons or something like that. So China really wanting to position as the next global leader, and I don't think, if you were going to go there, because a lot of people think that they want to be the world reserve currency, I don't think they do, personally. I think they want to influence and have the highest level of influence, but I don't think they want to take on that responsibility. I think that goes to the IMF, International Monetary Fund. So, it's what's kind of surprising to me is even if you don't know anything about what's going on, do the markets, any of the markets, look sane to you on any level?
I saw a picture on La Cienega Boulevard in Los Angeles from a couple days ago, and gas was $6.13. I mean, more than even the markets. What I found interesting is how many people that before the term inflation or these types of things, no one really cared about them, right? It's like, what are you even talking about? I don't have an economics degree. But regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, everyone is noticing that their standard of living is going down and things are getting more expensive. Now, dependent on where you are on the political spectrum, you may believe there's one solution on one side versus the other. But the problem is something that everyone seems to begin to notice. Exactly. And that's what I'm seeing, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to ask about also was, like the big master grand conspiracy theory that people have like always espoused is, well, they want to build a one world government. And everyone's like, oh, I don't know. But you said Canada has no gold, and then we've got all these countries just, they're in havoc over the debt. And if they build this centralized currency system and they bring everyone into this central bank programmable money, and they, all these people are suffering from inflation, so say, hey, look, sign up, get your thing, you get free money. But what happens is you're ultimately able to bypass all of countries. So picking up on the idea that as part of the reset, that the programmable money and the central bank digital currency systems create, your opinion on it creating a streamlined control system that basically negates, national freedoms and sovereignty and stuff.
It does, though I think that we're going to end up with a global currency, the SDR, special drawing rights, which is the currency of the IMF, and it's just a name, SDR. It's just a name, just like the US dollar. It's just a name. And then we'll have local currencies so that it'll still appear to not be one world controlled.
Got it.
But the other part of what they've talked about, meaning the IMF and a lot of their documents that I read, is wanting everything held on these digital tokens broken down into itty-bitty bite-sized pieces, because ultimately, and this is not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm data gal, right? So if I can't prove it, I don't say it. But, what they want is they want you to volunteer. They want you to volunteer your freedom. They want you to volunteer your wealth. They want you to volunteer your equity. And the way to get you to do it is perception management, right? So even going back to the inflation, and if they can move up your purchases, this is where that problem is. So it's fascinating to me where we are right at this moment, because you need the supply chain that needs people buying less so that they can have a chance to recoup and get up to speed and fix or shift what's broken. And on the other hand, the governments need people to spend because they've created all of this liquidity, all of these new currencies. And make no mistake, every time they do that, the currency that's already out there loses value, which is why you saw gas at 671. It's probably going higher, and so are food. I mean, food on a global basis it is the biggest issue for most people as we go through the reset and the hyperinflation. And the interesting thing is, and there could be something different, but I haven't been able to find it yet, is that this, when we go into the digital currency system, in order to justify creating that new currency, they're still basing it on debt. So they have to get rid of all the debt, or most of the debt, that is in the system in order to reset into something new. And I have a real concern that when they do introduce that digital currency, people will assume and think, oh, it's fixed, right? It's not. It's a tool to create that hyperinflation. Because whether it's hyperdeflation or it's hyperinflation, I mean, they're really just the flip side of the same coin. The only way to fight deflation is with inflation, and frankly, the only way to fight inflation is with deflation. So they're between a rock and a hard place because they've used up really all their tools, and they're trying to create new tools to work with. But it's a big experiment. It's a huge experiment. And, there are lots of unintended consequences from those experiments that are hidden from us at the moment until they're not.
So it's almost like the reset is really the centralized power brokers of the world saying, we are on a huge collision course and something bad is going to happen. So let's smoke screen this into we have something better on the way. And that's basically what it is. It's kind of like you have like a huge river coming down to your property. So you build a diversion. You're like, hey, it's fixed. That's kind of what's happened. That's kind of what the reset is about.
Correct. Well, okay, wait. There's a reset and then there's reset, right? And what I mean by that is like the only difference between inflation and hyperinflation is the speed of the inflation. And as you indicated earlier, when they could keep it around 2%, it still happened. You still lost 2% of your purchasing power per year, right, compounding, but it was slow enough that you didn't notice it. It's not slow anymore.
Right.
And I mean, I'm so glad that Powell has finally come out and said, well, maybe it's not, maybe inflation is stickier than they anticipated. And it's going to be even stickier because wages are sticky.
Right.
In other words, you pay somebody $10 an hour, you're not going to turn around and be able to give them $5. Though through inflation, they make that 10 spend like 5. And all of that has enabled that income inequality and that wealth inequality. And so now they're battling that, but they created it and they continue to create it.
So talk to me a little bit about, let's look like macro, some of the deeper rabbit hole of this whole reset agenda. And some of that you've talked to me about is basically tokenizing everyone's assets, mm-hmm, and basically getting people to volunteer to give them up through an internet of bodies types of things. So mm-hmm, let's go down the rabbit hole of how that could look and how that connects into this whole centralized grid, and kind of also just to fit in with the term everyone's heard, you'll own nothing and be happy. How is this an example of how you get to that?
The easier it is to spend money, the more money we spend. And if we are inspired to buy that new car or buy that new dress or what have you, and what you have all of your money and all of your equity held on your phone. How easy is it to spend?
Got it.
Without even thinking about it. And then what you've really done is you have volunteered it, right? So as long as they can maintain our confidence, this is a con game, it requires confidence. So as long as they can maintain our confidence, oh, the central banks know what they're doing, right? Oh, the dollar can never go away. What are they talking about? They're talking about a digital dollar. So they keep things as close to the same as what people are used to until it's too late.
And that's why they're using those similar terms.
100%. Yeah, 100%, of course. I mean, they even talk about that. We know how to do this. They do know how to do this. They have lots of practice. And they just keep things as normal looking as possible. That's why when the cryptocurrencies started coming out, they didn't do anything about them because they didn't feel threatened, and it was getting people comfortable operating in that area.
So then ultimately the goal is this central bank digital currency that basically connects everything. You know, we've had the World Economic Forum talking about an internet ID that'll monitor you for your browsing history and your misinformation. So they centralized this whole thing into your health pass and all these things. And then you're saying basically the goal is to tokenize your assets so that you'll be willing to continue to spend even if you don't have any cash. So then you basically volunteer your assets. Once you run out of equity, and then you spend them all through tokenize, so it's easy, you hit a couple buttons. Done. And then once you're done with it, they don't care anyways, because then they just acquire the asset, then you move to the next iteration of it, which is you become a renter, like they say, then they own everything, and then we all rent it from them, right? So they're basically using it to squeeze out the wealth transfer. Is that kind of what this whole tokenization is about?
100%. I mean, it looks to me like the goal is to go back to serfdom, where you have, well, look at, if you say you will own nothing and be happy, there's somebody that owns everything, right? So I'd rather be in that group that owns stuff and that leases things out. And I think it should be pretty easy for people to see, look at how much rents have gone up. It's not just the underlying real estate, because, hey, the corporations went into that in 2008 and they haven't slowed down. And what do they care? They get free money anyway, so they don't care how much something costs. They just want that ownership piece and that control. But yeah, absolutely. That is the goal. And, and everybody has a choice. You can choose to do nothing and stay in the system. And at the end of the day, that's what you end up with, is nothing. And then you have to rent everything. And who in the world is going to choose how much that rent is?
Especially if they have it all into a digitized system too, right?
Exactly. And you don't pay the rent or whatever, boom, you're locked out. Smart houses, smart contracts, everything's on, and what are you going to do? I mean, one of the examples that they used in one of the pieces that I read was a car. So you have a car. If you don't make your car payment, you have, a certain amount of time to do it. And if you don't, well, they just draw autonomous driving, right? They just have the car drive away. Right. They can lock you, if you have a smart house, really, they can lock you out of your house. For governments, it's primarily about taxation, right? So it's easy to collect taxes. And hey, how about that new proposal where every account that holds $600 is going to be reported to the IRS. That probably won't fly. So what they're going to do, raise it to $10,000? Who are they trying to get?
What do you think that is about? Because we are seeing globally all these insane new taxes, right? Like the in Biden's infrastructure, as we were talking about, which is they're running the test pilot program on mileage taxes. And for those that don't know, it's a real thing. You can read it right in the infrastructure plan. And they're running a test program with volunteers, which will connect to a GPS so they can monitor the whole thing and pull taxes out based off of the mileage you drove. So then in my head, it makes me connect the dot and go, okay, well, if you go 2 more dots ahead, that GPS or chip connects to your central bank digital currency. It's all logged in and they pull it out on their own. And we're seeing more of these insane type of taxes. What do you make of that, and how does that fit into this overall agenda?
Oh, well, again, it goes back to control. But before we talk about that, who's been checking all of the mileage and how people have been driving and getting people to volunteer so that their insurance is lower? Right? So again, getting people used to things, excuse me, getting people used to things so that they do volunteer. Because what is the big deal? Right? Hey, I'm going to get cheaper insurance coverage on my car if I let them track me, right? It's like the chips and the dogs, right? People get comfortable with things that seem outrageous to begin with. So it really is all about control. It's 100% about control and dictating what you can do, what you can't do, what you can. This misinformation thing, my God, when did we get to the point where nobody can have a different opinion? When did we get to that? When did that become okay? Because we are not all the same. And we are hopefully thinking human beings. And we have all of these experiences to draw on. And the longer you live, the more experiences you have, to draw on. And, at what point did we collectively decide that the only opinion that counts and the only opinion that's right is one opinion? Isn't that part of all of the control? Is getting neighbor to rat out neighbor? And I believe they did that in Nazi Germany too.
Well, I read an article the other day of a woman who reported her family members to the FBI. And I believe it was the family members said something about the election and had some opinions. So she reported them to the FBI for it. And so, I mean, it's happening. I mean, the FBI did come out, and Biden administration did came out encouraging people that they say are radicalized to be reported. So, I mean, that is happening. It's like, it almost makes me think, so the reset is basically...
I kind of wish we were having this conversation with a glass of wine.
We got that one coming up in a little bit.
I know.
It almost makes me feel like really what the reset is basically, I was thinking most of human history is basically a neo-feudalism totalitarian system with a few glimpses of freedom. And it's basically like the reset is just it's a corporate takeover to return to their attempt to return to a similar pattern that we've had in the past. And that's kind of what it is, right?
Exactly. That's the feudal system. And everybody else, you've just got a whole bunch of serfs at the lowest level jobs, or to do whatever those at the top need you to do. But yeah, absolutely. And looking at the digital currencies and the digital systems and the bodies, the digital bodies, and everything tied into a system that is controlled by one central power is kind of scary.
And who is this central power? Like, who's behind this reset? Whether it's the Great Reset, the currency reset, I mean, who's behind it?
There might be some that are behind it that I don't know about. Right. Okay, so I want to say that because this is not something that I can prove. Right. But for sure, all the members of the IMF. There are 196 countries in the world. 189 of them belong to the IMF, and it's every Treasury Secretary and every central bank chief. And neither one of those are elected officials, and yet they are really pulling all of the strings. So, and they are the ones that are driving, overtly, I'll say, overtly driving the reset. But, you have all of these other groups, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, the UN, they all are really, it's a big collective. It's a big collective.
That have no allegiance to any specific country. It's basically, that term, globalist, right? It's a globalist movement.
And I remember in the 80s when I had become a stockbroker, and all of the talk about globalization. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't know that this is such a great idea, but I remember that really quite clearly. And here we are today. And when the world attempted to deglobalize, well, then other things happened that kind of shut all of those movements down, although not completely down. In some places, like Hong Kong, I don't know if there are any glimmers of the democracy movement anymore, but I think we need a global democracy movement or something that gives power back to the people.
There clearly has been, over the last handful of years, not just in America, but many countries, it seems there's been kind of more nationalist, populist types of movements that have occurred. Do you think that that's why there's been such a push to ram down this reset? Like, it's almost like people seem to be demanding a higher level of sovereignty and not allowing these big globalist corporations and entities to run things. And then it's been met with like a pretty equal force. We now have, think about the fact that they're basically trying to push a one world corporate totalitarian system. And they're doing it so blatantly that they run commercials on it. They say, and they pay for the ads and they pop them up. It's really something.
Oh, you can get desensitized to stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about the drug companies. Love those drug companies, right? They used to never advertise. And then they started to advertise, but then all of the side effects, they would say it so fast that you really couldn't follow it. They don't do that anymore. They say these side effects slow enough for you to hear they could kill you. They could turn your nose brown and have it fall off. And, obviously people don't care. People are buying this crap, or they wouldn't be advertising it. They'd let the doctors do it. So people can become desensitized to things, and that's exactly what you're talking about. It's hiding in plain sight. Well, we told you. We told you we were going to do it. Why are you surprised that we did it? And maybe most people don't even care because they go, well, I don't know. I mean, that's why your line of questioning is so good, because they go, well, I don't think that really applies to me. I mean, this is the good old USA or France or wherever you are in the world. And, well, that's over there. Well, it's not. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And before you know it, it's already been happening. So it's not something that I'm waiting for. It's been happening slowly for a very long time. But before you know it, you've volunteered all your freedom and you volunteered all your wealth. And that's how it impacts you. Then you have somebody else that's dictating everything to you. And worse, to your children and your grandchildren and to generations to come. And I think we all have to ask ourselves if that's okay, if somebody else that doesn't love you and doesn't care about you is dictating everything in your life, and you lose all opportunity. I mean, what made America great was because it was the land of opportunity. where an immigrant could come in and work really hard and achieve the American dream. But that American dream we've been robbed of that. And, on a personal note, all of my focus, or at least most of my focus, has been on ensuring that my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren retain choices. And I think the only way that you can, if we just allow the takeover, the only way that you can really have a shot at that is by holding wealth that's outside of the system, and real money gold and real money silver, because then you have choices. You can always convert gold into any currency and therefore any good or any service. But if you leave it in the system, they're already telling you we need more inflation. What that's really saying is that the currency, wherever you are in the world, the currency is overvalued. That's what that means. It's real simple. And we're going to take it down. We need more inflation. Even with the increase in the wages, has it kept pace with the inflation that we've been seeing? Not even marginally close. So, for people that have plenty, does it really matter if the gas is $6.71 a gallon? No, they're still going to put it in their cars and they're still going to drive wherever. But for somebody that's even making $15 an hour, that's $6.71. That's a lot of their time to work. And they might have to make a choice between putting food on the table or putting gas in the car.
Which is why Hitler was able to take over, and historically why totalitarian regimes take over after this type of chaos, right?
Exactly. Because, save me. Anything you say, just save me. But you don't get saved. You get sucked into a system that's even worse. And this reset isn't just about the monetary system reset. It's the social, as well as the general economic, as well as the financial system. It's a complete reset. It's really like we have to be conscious of this no matter where you are in your life, because ignoring this means that you get no say in what this new total system looks like. And we need to get enough people to say no, and we vote with our purses. That's how we vote, or our wallets. That's how we vote. And we need to be conscious about the choices that we make on really every level. This is not a good time to be walking through the world unconscious, because you put yourself in harm's way and in too much jeopardy, and your family too. Just, if not me, who? If not now, when? We have to say no, and we have to vote with our purses or wallets, as the case may be. So,
what do you think are the biggest ways to resist it? So, another thing also, whether you're on the left or the right, I feel like people can, if they can get out of their story enough, I think most people can agree. At the end of the day, what they don't want is a few people controlling everything. Right. It's just that people think the solution is different. But the problem, I think people can agree with. So then the question is, well, what do we do, or what are the most important things one can do? So let's start first. You said have your financial plan, your money outside of the system. If you haven't yet, right there down below in the comments and in the description is the link where you can get a complimentary call with Lynette and her team, where you can break down, understand what are your blind spots on your financial plan and your overall plan as this reset continues to accelerate. Just remember, folks, it's only been a very short period of time since the reset word has been popularized. So we're in the very early inning of this push, and it's important to be prepared. So number one of that is financial. There's a complimentary link right there where you can schedule a call and get the help, right? We do it with our fitness, you do it with your diet, but what's more important is to have a plan set up for your sovereignty and your children's sovereignty.
Absolutely.
So we got the link to that right there down below. I highly recommend you do that. So we've got that component, and that's the financial, right? But then after that, let's talk about some of the qualities as an individual that we can begin to cultivate that you think are important for fighting back against this, but more importantly, ensuring your own freedom and the most important type of mindsets that we need to be adopting in this new age.
Well, that's really a great question. And it's one that I've been working on and developing personally for a very long time. And most people know the mantra, right? So food, water, energy, security, and of course with the gold and silver, barterability, wealth preservation, community is critical, as well as shelter. Because these are the things that we need no matter what is happening out there. And, grocery store shelves are going bare again, and it's getting harder to get toilet paper again. And so, you want to be as independent and self-sufficient as possible. And so the skills that, everybody here comes in with skills. We all have skills. We all have gifts of some kind. And so that's why community is, I put that up there. Food is the biggest issue for most people, but I put community up there, probably as important or actually maybe even a little bit more important than even your basic food. Because, coming together in community, everybody has different skill sets. And they also have, and it's, what can they do? Start thinking for themselves. Start thinking logically. And if something doesn't make sense to you, believe that it is insane, that it doesn't make sense. Not, oh, well, they must understand it. I don't understand it. If you can't understand it, there's a reason why you can't understand it. It takes us back to the digital currencies. You have to be a specific kind of engineer in order to understand how these things work. Well, that doesn't make me very comfortable, to be perfectly honest with you. If I can't understand it or the logic behind it, then who's controlling it? And how can it be controlled? And what are the intentions behind those entities or those people that are actually controlling it? Because what it is a contract. That's what it is. That's what all of these financial instruments are. And people don't think about it that, well, it's a stock. Well, it's an ETF. Well, it's an annuity. Well, it's this, or it's a contract. So you need to understand the choices that you're making. You need to think independently. And if you don't understand them, then you can come together in community and talk to somebody that's part of that community that can understand it, or walk away from it, quite honestly, and say, okay, maybe I'll gamble a little bit over here, but if I can't understand it, then, and I can't really own it, right? It's contract. I can't really own it. I'm just subject to the counterparty to that contract. So I really think that people need to start thinking for themselves. Don't take my word for it. Don't take your word for it. Don't take their word for it. Look at all of the data. Read the articles. That's why I always publish links. This is my opinion. That's all I can give you is my opinion, right? But this is all of what I was looking at. Well, not all, but this is a part of what I'm looking at to formulate that opinion. Here, you look at this too. You have a different opinion? Rock and roll hoochie coo. We can disagree. We can have different opinions, and we can still be in community. So, you want to be as independent as possible. And these are the things that we all kind of need: food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, shelter. We also, if you have I kind of put this under food because it's your health and it's your wealth. And so you want to be as strong. You want to have the strongest immune system as possible to battle anything that's out there, frankly, and not get sick. If you have a chronic illness, this is something else that you need to plan for. And how much does that chronic illness cost you a year right now? And then, first of all, if it's repairable, you should think about repairing it. A lot of times it's food and it's exercise, and that will do it. But you've just got to be independent.
So one of the things that I really respect about you is that you've actually done all of these things.
Yes.
And I really like that, because there's a lot of people that they're aware of what's happening. Maybe they consume the information, they study it, they can talk great about it, but you go and you look at their life and you wouldn't say that they're legitimately prepared for it.
Correct.
And I want to talk about that because I believe that some of the most important elements that we need to cultivate are things that have to do with taking 100% total responsibility, developing willpower, the discipline, and you're someone that's really done these things. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about some of those types of skill sets or mindsets that we can start to adopt, where if we're overwhelmed by what's happening, or you're afraid of what's happening, or your finances are so underwhelming that it's hard to even get motivated on it and get that initial dopamine. I mean, how do you pull yourself forward and become someone that makes things happen?
That's a really good question. And, because we've had enough conversations in here, but I have definitely felt guided my whole life. So I don't know that I ever really needed to motivate myself to do it. I think I came into this world motivated, and I believe my research. I mean, I know how deeply I dig into things. And if you know something to be true and you don't do anything about it, shame on you. I mean, really, shame on you. And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I could definitely see how this is really overwhelming, that whole mantra piece. But you look at where you feel the most vulnerable, and then you start to attack one thing at a time, because you can't do it all at once.
So maybe you go, all right, finances, not so good. All right, what could I do? Oh, maybe I should start a business, maybe one that leverages the internet so I can't declare non-essential as quicker. Or you go, okay, my water, okay, I don't have any food storage. Or you start going down the list.
Exactly.
And you get that honesty with yourself and say, what's most important? Is it my finances? Do I need cash flow? Do I need some food storage?
Well, here's the thing about the finances, right? Because you're 100% right about that, but a lot of people are in a circumstance where they feel like, well, they can't really do much about it. Right? And I would say that that's probably not true, because you have to really look within and see, what do you bring to this world? I mean, that's what I did. What do I bring to this world? And then you start to cultivate that and just do it. And yeah, we were really lucky on the internet. I mean, I didn't have any downtime at all. And even up here we are filming up here. So I love that. We've got the studio, etc. But maybe, one thing for sure that my mother did well, and she always said, if it's true, you can say it. And I see a lot of people that don't have a lot of self-confidence, but yet they have wonderful skill sets. And they have, and maybe what you have, you don't think of as marketable, but it is. Everybody has a gift that they are bringing to the table. That is definitely something that I've learned over all these years that I've lived. And also, how easy is it to go ahead and learn new skills? I mean, when I was starting, I was living in a little condo, little 2-bedroom condo, getting ready to retire. I was going to travel, I was going to do all of this. And then 2008 hit, and I went, holy crap, the system just died. So I changed all of my plans. You were at the farm yesterday. I bought a half an acre in the middle of the city, mind you, because of my children, because I would never leave them. And you saw my farm. So I learned to do irrigation. Do I like to do irrigation? No, I don't like to do it. But can I do it? 100% I can do it. So the other piece of it is to teach yourself these skill sets. And if you get into a community that I have this skill set, I can share this with you. I can teach you how to do it. Now you have that skill set and you can go out and you can teach someone else how to do it. And you can also, again, just utilize that skill set. I'm fortunate. I don't have to lay irrigation anymore. I have others that do that for me. But I know how to if I had to. I totally know how to. So look in the mirror and do an assessment and be honest with yourself and be gentle with yourself. This is not about where do I lack. This is about what do I have to give.
Yeah, I like that. And the other thing that I really like that you said was, so you're saying that really maybe one of the core problems is we really have a pandemic of a lack of self-confidence.
Yeah.
And throughout history, that's always has what's allowed a divide and rule and ultimately a conquer ruling elite. There's that term, a psyop, right? A psychological operation, and people will say, oh, that's a psyop, that's a psyop. It's almost like the biggest psyop has been a mass infiltration of people's self-images where they just quite frankly don't think that they can create the independence they want or build the business where they want. They don't think they have a skill that's good enough, or they hear you and they're like, oh, well, then I'm over here. And you're saying everyone has it.
Right.
And it's about time for us to look in the mirror and to step into that, right?
100 bazillion%. Because we are living in a divide and conquer world right now. That should be pretty obvious. But we all have this power inside of us. We just have to own it and be okay with it. I mean, so many people, I did this with my children when they were little, and it was really important to me that they had self-confidence. So I would tell them, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're talented, you're smart, you can do this, you can do that. And one day, I heard all of these right words coming out of my mouth, and it was almost like I had an out-of-body experience. And I was looking down, and I realized in that moment that I was not personally living those words. I was just telling them. And I realized in that moment that if I wanted them to believe that for themselves, then I had to start living my words. And in some ways, it's definitely made life more challenging. But in other ways, it's made it so much more rewarding. And when you do that, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're smart, you're talented, you can do anything. Now, if we all felt that way about ourselves, and then we come together in community with other people that also, feel that level of self-love and self-confidence, then it's just this whole big thing that just grows and grows and grows.
That's what I believe. And when people have realized and they start to implement it in their life, and this happens, and we become leaders, and we inspire our friend and our wife and our husband to start building their side hustle, their passion, and we all start building like that, what happens is you quit. First of all, you quit electing losers that continue to steal and rob and lie to everyone, and everyone just says, well, that's the way it is.
Yeah,
and it has the same type of effect when you're in a abusive relationship, but then the person's self-esteem goes to another level, and all of a sudden they've set new standards. And that's why I've always been so passionate about personal development, because I think at the core, the number one problem is we, in mass, don't believe that we're capable of anything significant. And it's also by design, right? That's why they built the celebrities and the Hollywood system, is so that you give up your any level of confidence and esteem and power and think that they have it and you don't. And that's how the agendas are pushed, and that's how we give up our power and control. And I believe that more important than learning this about the interest rates and all these things, we all have to wake up and we all have to step into what you're talking about. And I think that's how the shift really completes itself. What do you think about that?
I 100% definitely do believe that. And we also have to, I feel like I lead by example. So, I mean, you saw, we didn't have much time yesterday at the farm, but you saw that I've got food, water. The energy was the first thing I did when I bought the house. I have to redo it. And you guys will, see that when I do that. But I've done all of those things, but a little bit at a time, right? And was it March or April or whenever the riots were happening, and I realized that the hole in my personal strategy was that I did not have a bug out house. I didn't wait. I'm not a procrastinator. That's the other piece. People procrastinate. Procrastination drives me crazy because I don't have time for it, right? And there have been times in my life where I have made significant choices with the flip of a coin. If this looks like, okay, this is a good choice, and this looks like an equally good choice, so many people will go back and forth, and they'll just go back and forth, and they can justify in their mind that they're moving forward because they're thinking about these two choices. Flip a coin and just go in that direction. And so, stop procrastinating. We don't have time to procrastinate anymore. Because while I can't tell you that it's going to be even more obvious and a black swan event is coming up, I can't tell you that that's going to be, Tuesday morning at 8:35. It could be. And so do I feel as ready as I would really like to be? Not really, to be perfectly honest with you. There's always going to be things to work on. There's always going to be things to do. But if, God forbid, a big crisis hit today, and I had to get out of Dodge really fast and have a place, not just for me, but for my family, including my extended family, well, you're here at the bug out house. We can be comfortable here and remote.
And I think the other thing too is like when you hear someone like you talking, right? And then you say, well, and she has a bug out house. And it's easy to separate the people that you follow from yourself and be like, well, I mean, there's no way I could do that. And I couldn't do it in a reasonable period of time. And I think we so greatly overestimate the abilities of others, and we underestimate the ability of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think when that switch flips, that's when we can really start to see a mass awakening.
Yeah, that is such a really good point. And the reality is honestly, I think the only difference between me and many other people that I know is that I show up and I'm committed to doing the work. Mm-hmm. That's it. I just show up. That's the biggest commitment that I have, not just to myself and to everybody out there, but to everybody, period. My family, my children, everything. I show up. That's all you have to do is show up. Do the work to whatever level you have the current ability to do it. I mean, when we were walking around my very lovely farm, and a lot of people have seen, all the food that's growing there, I guarantee you, when I was doing it all by myself, it did not look so nice. And I'm pretty darn sure I absolutely know that my neighbors were not happy with me. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. But I never gave up. So I kept showing up and doing the work. And now, I'm not going to say every neighbor is happy with me because I don't know that. But most of them are. At least it doesn't look like a big trash yard, which it did for a number of years. Definitely did for a number of years. Lots of people can attest to that. So you just have to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And damn the torpedoes. If I don't know how to do this, I'll learn. I can think, I have a brain. There's lots of information on the internet. There's lots of information all over the place. If there is something that I want to do, I trust that I will show up, do the work, and figure it out. And I think that's all you really have to start with. Just commit to showing up and doing the work and trust that you'll figure it out.
Beautiful. So guys, for everyone listening, we've got some more awesome parts coming up here shortly. If you've enjoyed today's episode, do us a couple things. Hit the like button on this video, give us a comment down below, share this video, copy and paste this, hook this up on your HDMI, grab some wine or coffee with a friend. And I want you to think about one way where you can show up. Look at it, whether it's finances, whether it's health, whether it's starting your side business, whether it's savings, whether it's getting some storages. Think about it. And take one step today. One of the simplest ways to start is to get your financial plan in order and organized.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to start that now is go right there down below, sign up for your complimentary call to build your entire wealth strategy game plan so you're prepared, not just for yourself, because it's not just about yourself, right? It's about your friends who aren't ready yet. It's your family who isn't ready yet. It's your children, your grandchildren. Get prepared for something larger than just yourself. So right there down below, you can sign up for your complimentary call to build your wealth, gold, and silver strategy so you're prepared for everything that's going to take place. You immediately check one of those boxes. We know the brain works off dopamine, we're reward mechanisms. So you get this first step dialed, you get your wealth strategy call set up, then you go to the next one, then you look at health, then you look at your side business, and we start to make these moves forward. We're all in this together, and although it seems overwhelming, there's a lot of things that we can do. So I want to pass it over to you to conclude.
But you did such a good job, and I do think that it is about showing up and being that leader for everybody else that is out there, because your family, so many people tell me all the time how alone they feel. You're not alone. I'm going to tell you right now, you are not alone, and you have a lot of people rooting for you, and I just got goosebumps. And know that you are part of this community. If you're watching this, you're part of this community. Share it with people that you love so that they become part of this community. And if everybody just shows up and does what they can, and this is so much bigger than the individual.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you for watching today's episode. Make sure you put this out there in the YouTube universe. Let us know what you think. We have some more awesome parts coming up. We're very excited about it. And you can get your complimentary call scheduled right there down below. We'll put all of Lynette's YouTubes and all that great stuff, if you aren't familiar with it, right there down below. Thanks for joining. We'll see you on the next one.